So good morning, everyone. Welcome to the BIPC Nottingshire's Introduction to Intellectual Property. So just a very brief disclaimer, and I'll proceed with intros very shortly. The webinar is for information purposes only, so please speak with a legal professional if you require any legal advice around intellectual property, and we can give you resources and signpost you to the correct people for that. So to start with, my name is Leon, and I'm also joined here by Natalie, and we are both advisors for the BIPC Nottinghamshire. So we're business and intellectual property advisors. And today we'll provide an introduction to intellectual property. So today's webinar will help you understand what intellectual property is, the different types of intellectual property, and why intellectual property is important to your business. So firstly, let's go through and have a look at what intellectual property is. So here's the agenda for this morning. So what intellectual property is, the different types of IP that we can explore, IP rights and valuing your IP assets, protecting your IP, and IP infringement and crime. Excuse me. So let's dive in. So firstly, what is intellectual property? Intellectual property or IP is all around you. You cannot see it or touch it, but if you own a business, then it's likely you will own some IP. There are four types of intellectual property. They are patents, trademarks, designs, and copyright. So let's dig a little bit deeper and find out more about each of these four types. So first we'll start with patents. So as you can see here on the screen at the moment, you're able to see a highlighted version of a patent by Thomas Edison, which was obviously the light bulb. So what we'll find out here is about how patents protect how products work, what they do, how they do it, and what they are made of and how they are made. So patents protect, as again, just to reiterate, how products work, what they do, how they do it, and what they're made of, and also how they are made. So next, moving to just sort of brief summary of other elements of IP is trademarks and registered design. A trademark protects the brand name of a product or service. The trademark could be made up of words, logos, or a combination of both, and can even be a sound or action based. A registered design protects overall visual appearance. The next one we have there is copyrights. Now, copyrights give you the right to exclusively control and exploit your creative works. And this is quite an extensive list. So copyright protects any literary work, art, music, websites, software, databases, films, and promotional material. Intellectual property rights are a legal form of protection that give the ability to stop others from using and importing or selling your creations. So IP should always be part of your business plan, whether you're just starting a business or already running one. Businesses build recognition, and that is linked to their brand, products, or service. This value builds up over time and is strongly linked to your IP assets. A real question for yourself is to think about how would it affect you if someone else sets up a business with your name, or if you find out that the name that you've been using belongs to someone else and you may need to stop trading. Various businesses invent products to solve problems. You may not know your product is unique and it could be protected by a patent or a registered design. You could then market these to others to solve their problems too. The success of your business depends on the commitment to your IP assets. So don't forget, when you're planning your business growth, what seems unimportant today might be worth millions of pounds in the future. So a question for yourself to ask really is, how do I identify my IP? Well, firstly, the Intellectual Property Office in the UK offers access to an IP business health check tool. This is fast, free, and it's available online. As you can see on screen, that would be ipo.gov.uk/IP health check. And that tool will essentially help you perform a bit of an audit to help you understand what assets you have and how you can protect them. An alternative, you can register for a one-to-one clinic with our IP attorney, which is Potter Clarkson, and we currently work with them quite closely, and they offer one-to-one clinic sessions. So you can also book that via the link on screen, and all these links will be sent to you following today's presentation as well. An alternative to that as well is you can also book a one-to-one with one of the BIP's advisors, such as myself or Natalie, and we can provide an informative session to help you identify your IP and understand it. We'll post that link again following the webinar today. I'll be able to book in some time slots with you today following the webinar, so we can go through that. Using the resources that we've sort of listed here will help you set out the next steps you need to take to protect your IP assets. So we're going to dig a little bit deeper into each of these. So the first one we're going to touch on is trademarks. So should I get a trademark is a question a lot of people ask themselves. You invest a lot of time when you name your business, service, or product, and that name is your brand, which can over time become your most valuable asset. Being registered at Companies House or owning a domain to your website does not provide you any legal right to prevent others using it as a trademark. Registering your brand name or logo as a trademark will let others know that you are serious about protecting your IP. This will also make it easier for you to stop others copying your trademarks and trading off your good name. How do we know when to register a trademark is a question you may be thinking yourself. Well, a registered trademark can be identified by R in a circle, as you can see on screen, and you can apply to register a trademark online through the Intellectual Property Office or for a trademark attorney. It is important to know that not every name can be registered as a trademark. Words that describe what you sell or the service you offer cannot be registered. Neither can names that have become customary in your line of trade. So remember, trademarks have to be original. Commonly used phrases such as putting customers first can't be registered as trademarks because they're not distinctive to any one business and because traders shouldn't be prevented from being able to state that they put their customers first. Trademarks can be a logo or a word or a combination of the two. They can also be a shape, a color, or even a sound. Trademarks cannot be offensive to the public or contain taboo words or pornographic images. You're not able to register specifically protected emblems or imply that your business is something that it isn't. When you have registered your trademark, you can renew it every 10 years. Once your business grows, it is important to remember that you can apply for trademarks all over the world. So moving forward, we'll now look at patents and a little bit more in depth. So the best inventions are those that solve problems, big or little solutions that will make our lives better. Before you start thinking about all the millions that your invention will bring in, you need to develop it. If you can develop how your invention is going to work, what it is made of, and if it is a new invention, then you may be able to protect it with a patent. But remember, patents protect how something works. Design protects the appearance, trademark protects the brand, and copyright protects the creative works. Is your invention actually new? So this is something you need to think about. Is your invention actually new? Think about if your invention is actually new, and if it is, will it help people and will people want to buy it? Having a patent is not a guarantee of having a successful business. But if you're confident of its use and its commercial success, then for now, you need to keep your invention a secret. As with any big investment or new business idea, you should always get legal advice, and it should be safe for you to discuss with your IP lawyers. So to really touch on that a little bit more in depth is if you do have an idea for an invention or you have something that you feel that can generate some form of revenue and you want to protect it and you're not sure whether it is something you can protect, I would recommend keeping it as a secret for now and speak with specialists in those areas that can provide you that legal advice and to give yourself that reassurance that no one's going to run away with your idea, essentially. So a question a lot of people do ask is, what will an IP lawyer need to know? An IP lawyer will ask you to consider how you're going to use the patent and what you'll gain from having a patent. A patent is a legal document that can provide you protection for your invention up to 20 years. So ensuring it's carefully drafted is very important. If your patent is commercially valuable, you'll need to make sure that the patent, the protection of the patent offers, will help prevent others copying in the markets that you're interested in. You may discover that a registered design could be a better option for you, or you could give your invention a name and protect it with a trademark, then continue to build a brand and increase your market share that way. So to reiterate on that point, if you do have a patent and you feel it is commercially viable, ensure that you're looking at it from the perspective if you're trading in the UK or you're trading abroad, you need to make sure that you have that registered in those continents and those countries as well to make sure you're protected as much as possible. So moving forward, we're going to look at, should I have a registered design? Now, as you can see on screen here at the moment, that is a fully certified design for a silicone makeup brush. So it's, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into this now. So if you have designed something new that has a pattern, shape, configuration, or ornamentation, and you do not want anyone to copy it, you can apply for a registered design with the Intellectual Property Office. By doing so, you prevent others from using design without your permission. So do I need to renew a registered design? And what's the longest term? UK registered designs need to be renewed every 5 years and can last for a maximum term of 25 years. A registered design protects the look or the appearance of a product. If you design something that provides a new functionality, such as a needle threading device, you may want to apply for a patent which protects how something works. So it's very important to understand the two. Again, if you design something that provides a functionality for something that's already pre-existing, then you may need to apply for a patent that protects how something works. However, if it's completely new, you may be able to utilize the registered design to protect that work. So some products cannot be registered because they do not fit the criteria to be considered a design, or they are shaped in a way to achieve a technical function or shape in a way solely to fit something else. You can benefit from automatic design rights, and these are a UK unregistered design right in the UK, an unregistered community design right in Europe. But it's important to remember these are limited, harder to enforce, and have a shorter duration of protection. It's also important to know that a surface patent is not protected by UK unregistered design rights. So if you have a distinctive patent that you do not want copied, then you should apply for a registered design. Relying solely on an unregistered design is something to have to think about considerably. Careful consideration should be made on relying solely on unregistered designs, because where disputes arise, you may need to provide evidence of the existence of the rights. So we will touch a little bit more on that as we go through the webinar today. But to give a brief summary on that, that means that if you do rely on automatic design rights, you'll also need to document an evidence of when you created said product or service. So I would ensure that if that is something that you're going to rely on, make sure you can send yourself a copy of what you designed through the post. Make sure it's timestamped and don't open that envelope. That will help you ensure that if anything does arise in the future, you will have a much more you have more evidence support in court. But again, this is information purpose, and I would seek more guidance from a legal counsel such as Potter Clarkson. So the law, and it's always the scary part when it comes to things like this for a lot of people. So copy and registered design is a criminal act and may result in high fines and imprisonment. However, with unregistered designs, it is your responsibility to prove intentional copying. So again, as we've mentioned, if you do have something that you've designed and you've not protected it, and you feel someone's infringing on that design, speak with a specialist or a legal attorney, and they'll be able to provide more information on that. So another question that arises, is copyright important to my business? Now, many people in this day and age, with how much we've advanced in the digital age, will understand copyright and there's variations of it. So we'll explain that a bit further. So copyright gives you the right to exclusively control and exploit your creative works. So let's have a look at what it does cover again. So that would be literature, art, music, dramatic works, sound recordings, photographs, software, databases, film, radio, and television broadcasts. How long does copyright last for? So copyright is an automatic process. So copyright lasts for the lifetime of the creator for 70 years after their death. In the UK, copyright exists automatically when something is written down or recorded. There's no formal registration. However, it is a good idea to put the C in the little circle, which is the copyright stamp at the end of your work, followed by the year. This will show others that the copyright in the work is claimed by you. In this digital age, you can also apply for metadata to your work to indicate that you are the owner, the copyright owner of that said work as well. So moving on, do I have IP rights? So what we'd recommend, it's always important to keep a record of your IP assets. This is called an IP audit. IP audits identify the products and services most important to your business. They identify the legal rights associated with your IP assets and identify the market advantage of these rights. So it's really important to remember when you're looking at your IP, it's best to do it as an early stage, when you're starting your business, especially if your business is heavy product design. So if you're designing something or implementing a new product to the market, looking at your IP can considerably help your business. But just overall, understanding your brand and how to protect it is very important. So what I'm going to do here at the moment is I'm going to pass over to Natalie, and she will then continue to explore this with yourselves as well. So Natalie, if you'd like, go ahead and share that.
Thank you, Leon. Okay. Fantastic. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep, it's all good.
Yep, perfect. Okay, so moving on with valuing your IP assets. Valuing your IP assets, you value them in the same way you would value your physical assets. So any kind of equipment that you have for your business, you would value that and it would be part of your asset. So you do IP in the same way. It can include things like customer lists, databases, or secret recipes if you have some sort of food business. So there are a lot of different things that people don't necessarily think about with IP assets. If you're writing training modules and things like that, training material, they would count as your IP assets. So there's a few different ways that you can value your assets. One of them is by calculating how much time you would need to develop an asset from scratch. The other one is to estimate how much a competitor may pay for one of your assets. So if it is too difficult for you to value them yourself, then you can enlist the help of an accountant to help you value your assets. And then they can also help you put it into the context of your business and see where it applies to your business. So should I license or franchise my IP? IP can be bought, it can be sold, and it can be licensed. When you look at selling your IP or licensing or franchising aspects of your business and IP assets, it can be very lucrative and make up a big part of your business, and it can even increase your market share. So if you've developed a product or service, you could benefit from licensing your IP, and you could license it or sell it as an asset by itself. So whether that be a piece of music or a piece of artwork. You could license an asset such as the design rights of something. So if it's just a design aspect of something, so just a portion of it, but then you could also go a bit bigger and look at franchising an entire business model. So there are many franchises that we see on the high street, a lot of fast food restaurants and things like that, they will franchise their businesses. So that can also be a really lucrative way of sharing your IP assets. So on the other side of that, should I become a franchisee? So as a new business, you could buy a franchise from somebody else, and it would be a really quick way of getting a competitive advantage. So if you look at buying a franchisee, something that's already set up, that it's already running, it already has those kind of processes in place, it will reduce a lot of costs for you implementing those processes and you creating those products and services. It also reduces development time. So if you don't have to develop a new product or develop a new service, you just kind of buy in the franchise to use somebody else's or sell somebody else's. It cuts it back on that. And you also get access to industry expertise. So if you're looking at buying a franchise that's been up and running for years and they already know what they're doing, you will have access to a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of experience that you can apply to your franchise. Okay, so should I protect my IP overseas? So it's really important to know that IP rights are territorial and are only valid in the country that you register them in. So if you do plan to do business or currently are trading abroad, it's essential that you understand how to use your IP, how to protect it, and how to enforce the IP rights that you own. So you would need to register your IP in every country that you plan to use your IP or that you want to protect it into. You should also consider the benefits of registering your IP abroad ahead of entering the market. So before you start trading, before you start selling your service, make sure you factor in not just the IP in the country that you're based in, but also abroad. If you're going to be trading in those areas, or if it's likely that somebody else could pick up your product or service in those areas. if your kind of product or service is transferable into those different countries, then you definitely need to factor in registering your IP assets ahead of selling those products. So you should protect the markets that you want to trade in and potentially infringing markets too. So sometimes, your IP assets can cross over into different markets. So it's really important that you explore all of those avenues and get some legal advice about how you go about registering abroad and where and how you should register. Okay, so again, a bit more information about registering your IP abroad. The IP office has country guides for key markets around the world. So it has IP attaches that provide advice in Southeast Asia, China, India, and Brazil. And they work with local UK trade and investment and foreign and Commonwealth office. The IP attaches are based in their representative countries and they are free to access as well. Okay, so now we get to the tricky bit. How do I avoid infringing IP work? So before you develop a business idea, it's really important that you check your name, you check the products or your idea to make sure that you're not infringing on somebody else's IP. It can be very easy to do, but a quick check will save you a lot of time and a lot of effort in the future. Carry out your own IP audit, as I spoke about before, to make sure that you know exactly what your IP assets are, and so that you're able to put quick protection in place before you even start trading, so that others don't copy or infringe your IP. So how do I avoid infringing IP in work? A lot of people don't know that they could be infringing in the workplace. So it's important to identify any IP that's owned by others that you want to use in your workplace, to make sure you've got the correct licensing, or that you need to buy the IP or anything like that. So there are a lot of different things that we probably use in the workplace that we don't really think about. So music that's played in the workplace, unfortunately, we do need to have a license to play other people's music in the workplace. That's something that a lot of people don't necessarily think that they have to do. Software that we use, it's quite easy to find software online. You know, if you don't go out and buy it from somewhere, people might tell you to download it from one place or another. You have to make sure that you've got the right license to use that, otherwise you are infringing on somebody else's IP. Images you upload, I know that you can go on Google and, you know, there's thousands of images, millions of images available, and people use them on their social media, on their websites, even on their products. But somebody has created these images, and at some point they will have either protected their images. Some people may not, but it's important to know whether the images have been copyrighted by somebody else and whether you have a license to use that. There are a lot of great platforms where you can use other people's images. You may not have to buy them. You may just have to credit the copyright owner or the creator of them. So there's a lot of different ways of accessing images online, but it's good to kind of keep on top of knowing who owns the license. And I think one of the most well-known things with IP and infringing on somebody else's work, probably one of the things that's been around the longest, is selling counterfeit goods. You know, we've been on markets and seen counterfeit goods, trainers, tracksuits and things like that. So hopefully you'll kind of recognize if someone's trying to sell you some counterfeit goods, and you'll move away from it. So yeah, there are lots of different ways. I mean, that's just a small section of it. There are many more counterfeit goods out there that you can. Oh, something's happening. So what to do if someone is using my IP? If you think someone is copying your IP, or if you think someone is using your IP, then they could be infringing on your IP rights. So it's just good to know that you do have a legal right to take action. So you can try and prevent them from using it or seek compensation. there are a few different ways to try and resolve it. It's always good to get advice from an IP lawyer or solicitor so you know what your kind of options are. Mediation is the most common route because it's cheaper, it's easier, it's less time consuming, and it can actually be beneficial for all parties. So if you go through mediation, you may find that, you know, the other party doesn't actually know that they're infringing on your IP, and they may decide that they want to buy your license, or you may come to a commercial agreement. So mediation can be a really, really good way to tackle an IP infringement. If you can't tackle it, come to some agreement through mediation, you can take claims below £500,000 to the IP Enterprise Court, and there will be a specialist judge who will hear your case. So what to do if your business is a victim of IP crime? IP crime is a massive problem amongst many businesses, and a lot of companies may not even realise that their IP has been infringed and that somebody else is using it. It may not be until somebody kind of puts in a complaint to say that the quality of that item that they bought is not very good, or if someone is spotted wearing something or using something, and you realise that that's actually not the thing that you've created yourself, somebody else has created it, or you've not licensed somebody else to use it. So IP theft has evolved from small, poor quality clothing copies. So like I was talking about before, your trainers, tracksuits and things like that. And it's moved to big production engineering plants where people are producing things like electrical goods, car parts, household products, and even things like medicines, which is quite worrying to know that there are people who are kind of creating that outside of where they should be. So how to prevent IP crime? If you do have IP rights, like Leon said before, it's essential that you are factoring in your IP assets at the beginning of starting your business and putting your business plan together, that you've got all of those IP assets in there. But along with your IP assets, it's also important that you have a plan of how you're going to protect those IP assets and how you're going to build in early warning signs for people using them. So this could be something like software that informs you if somebody is using your software or is uploading your images without having a license. So the IP crime group has a supply chain toolkit, which has a lot of different kind of methods of how to build in those early warning signs. You know, that saying prevention is better than cure, and that applies here to IP as well. So if we do get to a point where you have seen that someone's infringing on your IP and you need to report IP crime, there are different ways that you can do it. You can make a complaint to the authorities, which would either be the police, trading standards, or action fraud. Even if you think it might be a small case and you don't think it's worth reporting to anybody, just be aware that even a small case could lead to a bigger case. So it might just be that someone's using a design that you've made and you've seen that they've printed a few t-shirts and you think, oh, it's not worth me going to report it. But those same people might be doing that to hundreds of different companies around the world, around the UK. So it's always good to report it, regardless of how big or small you think it is, because you could be helping to protect other people as well. Most infringement cases are resolved using civil law or mediation, like we spoke about before. So you can't always guarantee that the enforcement agents will take action. They may advise you to go back and try and resolve it through mediation. So they'll make a decision based on whether they'll go forward with an actual case based on the circumstances. So it's just good to be aware of that, but don't let that put you off kind of making those reports if you think someone is infringing. So we've got some useful links here, which will give you a bit more information on intellectual property. So the Intellectual Property Office has a really good IP health check tool to help you kind of check what IP you've got and make sure how you're protecting it, and give you some information on how you go about protecting it. As Leon said before, we also work with Potter Clarkson. They put on some webinars for us, and they also have clinics, so you can access some free advice. I think it's 45 minutes or an hour that you can book onto one of their clinics, and they can help you kind of diagnose what you have and where you need to register, or what other support that you need to go forward. We also have 4 advisors across the BIPC in Nottingham, and you can book onto a one-to-one session with us, and we can support you with things not just IP but other areas of business. So it's definitely worth booking on if you need any support with your business. You will be able to book on for a 10-minute chat with us after if you want to ask any questions about the webinar today, if you want to ask any questions about how you may implement IP into your business, and we can give you a bit of advice on how to move forward. We do have a few different social media platforms. We have Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. We do also have Facebook as well, which is not on here because we've not updated it. So you can connect with us on there. We post our events on there regularly, so you can keep up to date with what events we've got going on. We also have our website. So again, we have our events on there. You can book onto all our events on our website. You can book onto one-to-ones on our website, or you can contact us via our email. So that's BIPC@Nottingham City, and one of our advisors will pick that up and get back to you. We do also have a physical presence across Nottingham, currently in Bulwell, Library, Sutton and Ashfield, Mansfield and Beeston. So if you prefer to come in and see someone face to face, you can book that on our website as well. Or alternatively, we do have the online bookings. So just wanted to say thank you to everyone for coming, and we would also like to say thank you to the Intellectual Property Office, because they have supported us and helped us to build this webinar and support you in the way that we can. So that's all from me.
Fantastic. Yeah, I just want to say thank you for everyone for joining.